Patricio Pitbull, or better known as Patricio Pitbull, has finally come to the UFC, and he is a good signing, not only for his skills in the cage that we will talk about in this video, but he's got the entertainment factor as well. He loves pressing people, like AJ McKee in their Bellator 263 press conference, saying he's going to go beat him up in front of his dad, and things just ultimately got heated. And even in today's event, he called out Yair Rodriguez through Instagram DMs, saying, sign the contract for a fight, show me that Mexican pride, really digging in, striking a nerve. And he was just hounding Yair Rodriguez through his DMs until the fight got signed, and he got pissed, called him a pussy because the fight just wasn't signed for March 29th on the Mexico City card, wanting to beat Yair Rodriguez on his own ground. And now the fight has been signed and booked for UFC 314 2 weeks later, which is better for his UFC fan growth for a debut in front of a larger crowd, but it ultimately just shows that he doesn't care where the fight takes place. He is hungry. He does not care if it's a hometown advantage for him or his opponent or not. And for more context of Pitbull's lead up to joining the UFC, they asked if he would fight Aljamain Sterling in March, but Sterling never accepted the fight. And then as well as that, there was Steve Garcia, who was another name that was placed in front of him. But Patricio Pitbull said that his visa wouldn't be ready in time for that fight.
E nesse meu tempo, me ofereceram Steve Garcia para lutar agora no final de semana, que esse cara ia enfrentar Edson Barbosa. Eu entro. Agora, pô, você vai dar tempo de tirar meu visto? Porque eles me ofereceram agora, faltando uma semana e meia. Aí os caras, pô, não vai dar tempo.
There were those names offered, and then he's literally come into the UFC 314 press conference and has pushed for a fight with Alexander Volkanovski straight after this if they both win. So he is definitely hungry. And to top that off, he was even talking about moving up to fight Michael Chandler at 155 pounds, who he has already faced in Bellator 6 years ago. So it is pretty clear Patricio Pitbull is hungry and he wants a fight. Now, Patricio Pitbull is nothing short of a decorated veteran. He has had a largely successful career, and a long one at that, having 43 professional fights. He currently holds a record of 36-7, so he's gone 12-4 with decisions, 13-2 with KOs, and 12-1 with submissions. So with him holding a 70% finish rate with 25 finishes, he does not fail to entertain in the cage. He is a prevalent finisher, especially out of Bellator, where he has spent pretty much most of his entire career. He is technically a 4-time featherweight Bellator champion, which has never existed in any global organization before, and has even become a double champion within his second championship reign back in May of 2019, where he moved up from featherweight to lightweight after defending his title twice. And he went up against none other than Michael Chandler at Bellator 221. And what did he do? Absolutely floored Chandler in the first round and took his belt. How many people do we have in the UFC that are just flooring Chandler like that? Literally only Charles Oliveira, but not nearly as quick. This seriously speaks to the danger that Pitbull brings with his hands. Now, Patricio Pitbull's success doesn't just come solely from him, of course. He has built a very strong team in Brazil, being the Pitbull brothers, with the likes of his older brother, Patricio Pitbull, and other talent like Leandro Higo, who are all trained by Eric Albarracin, who is a decorated coach that has a strong wrestling background and has assisted in multiple seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, and has also coached guys like Davison Figueiredo, Zhang Wei Li, and John Jones to an extent, and was also instrumental in the success of Henry Cejudo's ability to become a double champion in the UFC. And alongside Eric and his brother, Patricio Pitbull has also had assistance from guys like the Nogueira brothers and also other names across his career. So it's pretty safe to say Patricio Patricio Pitbull is definitely in safe hands in relation to the corner that he does have. Now, Pitbull started off his career going 14-0 until he suffered his first loss via a split decision to Joe Warren back in 2010, but then went on to fight some of the highest level fighters outside of the UFC throughout the next 15 years of his career, such as Benson Henderson, Michael Chandler, of course, Juan Archuleta, AJ McKee twice, and Sergio Pettis. And they were all fought in Bellator, where he fought primarily out of, with 30 of his 43 pro fights being from that organization, and over 17 of those fights are title fights, which is absolutely insane in terms of experience, and he went 24-6 within Bellator. But it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for Pitbull, as he then fought once in Rizin, which he would rather forget about, getting taken out stiff by Chihiro Suzuki, where he got wobbled initially with a looping left and then with a right over the temple, and then got taken out cold by a straight right down the pipe. And this was his only true actual KO loss. But aside from Bellator and Rizin, he was actually signed to PFL afterwards in 2024 and was supposed to fight Jesus Pinedo, who withdrew, which would have been insane. You know how much I rate Pinedo from my best fighters to sign from every division video, which if you haven't seen already, I highly recommend you check that one out. I'll leave it in the description. But aside from that, he was also supposed to fight Gabriel Braga to fill in for Pinedo, but he pulled out as well. So the PFL really was not working for him, as after those fight cancellations, PFL was not giving him anything. With their notorious string of poor matchmaking and overall miscommunication, he then demanded to be released. And with Bellator now officially extinct at the time of his release and now, there was really only one place left for him to go, and thankfully, that's the UFC. Now, physically, Patricio Pitbull isn't the size of like your Diego Lopez's and your Max Holloways. He's down in the short, stocky area with your Alexander Volkanovskis and your Josh Emmett, as he is 5'6" tall. But just like them, he makes up for it with the power that he has and the timing out of his orthodox stance. And being that stocky, trust me, this guy is very strong, very explosive, and that is definitely needed, as he only has a 66.5-inch reach, which is by far the smallest reach out of everyone in the UFC's top 15 in that featherweight division at the moment, with the closest one tailing him being Brian Ortega with a 69-inch reach, which is still 2.5 inches of reach over him. But being 5'6" and having that tiny reach, the guy is absolutely no stranger to going up against fighters that are bigger than him in pretty much every single fight he has ever been in. And being 36-7, with most of those wins being brutal finishes, it's proven that it isn't a real make or break factor for him. Now, circling back to that power and keeping the physical stats in mind, Pitbull obviously likes to fight short. He likes to keep it within close range with explosive movements on a linear line to hit the mark of the opponent. He does not use much lateral movement at all, which against dynamic strikers, it can be an issue, which we saw against Chihiro Suzuki and Rizin. However, it allows him to conserve his stamina very well, which riding through 9 5-round fights, he isn't someone that really slows down, as he is almost pressuring everyone he fights on the outside, and he takes control of the octagon. So he might be small and lack the range, but with the explosivity he has to get into the range that he needs, he is dangerous. You do not want to be in the pocket with Pitbull. That is for sure. Now, one of the more exciting disciplines that Pitbull definitely thrives in is, of course, the striking. Being 13-2 with KOs, it's clear to say that this bloke bloody delivers. And with the stature he has, and with the nickname Pitbull, you probably think that he is a kitchen sink throwing monster and just tries to decapitate people in the pocket. But this isn't actually the case. Pitbull is actually quite a consistently low output fighter, landing on average about 2.5 to 3 significant strikes per minute. And usually with low output fighters who have a ton of KOs, that usually directs us to look at their strike accuracy. And we take like Michael Venom Page, for example. Low output, bunch of KOs, has a 72% strike accuracy. That clear as day is saying that he is a sniper on the feet. But Pitbull actually only lands at 50%. He only lands 50% of the strikes that he throws. So he isn't exactly a sniper, but it's just the raw power he has in combination with the timing on his counter striking in the pocket. These two things combined are the most dangerous and successful parts of his game by far. Now, his hands are not only powerful, but they are very fast in the pocket, and he is extremely good at timing when the opponent is going to strike in heated exchanges and capitalize on it, even if he is on the back foot, where he still generates so much power. He's just a killer in that boxing to dirty boxing range. He loves the octagon control and pressures effectively when he has it, and he's got great hooks and straights on the front foot, which are definitely his best weapons, but he also does a great job of effectively ripping the body as well, and he's just very good with boxing combinations on the front foot, especially when he's got the opponent against the cage. And then in dirty boxing range to clinch range, he has really nice elbows and combinations with the knees up close as well, which he has shown in almost all of his fights. Then looking at when the fight gets to the ground, I mean, we'll get into the damn submission arsenal this guy has got in a second, but he is very good with his shot selection when he has the option to ground and pound. He's known as a pit bull, but honestly, he is a very methodical fighter. Now, at pure kickboxing range, he does struggle to an extent with his size, and he uses head kicks sparingly, but he does utilize heavy leg kicks effectively most of the time. As aside from the Suzuki KO loss he has, the only other TKO loss he has was to Benson Henderson, where those leg kicks got completely checked to the point he couldn't stand on his leg anymore because the check actually broke his leg, and then he obviously called it quits. But he still continues to use them, which does complement his style, as if he cuts down the speed and the movement of his opposition, his power in the exchanges and at close range becomes so much more prevalent. And yes, the positives are great, but there are some identifiable flaws with his stand-up, as with Pitbull not using a lot of lateral movement with his style, he is prone to getting tagged in exchanges, as his head is never off that center line. And yes, he uses his hands to block most shots, but when they aren't there, he's open to getting tagged because the movement just isn't there. And that's where the lack of movement can become an issue against dynamic strikers like Sergio Pettis, who beat him using very nice switch stance footwork with constant lateral movement after he would end his combinations, making him a lot faster than Pitbull and also making him a lot more unpredictable, and especially against Pitbull, who is a little bit flat-footed. And I mean, Pettis just mixing up the arsenal of kicks as well really kept Patricio at bay and allowed him to outwork Pitbull to get a pretty easy decision win there. And with the strike defense overall, it's just ultimately not bulletproof, which it borderline needs to be if he is using absolutely no lateral movement. And we have seen him leave his right hand down in exchanges at times, so there are some holes in his strike defense ultimately. So that being said, clinch and boxing range, he is always dangerous. At range, he can manage well, but if it's a dynamic offbeat striker with good accuracy and speed, he's definitely at a disadvantage stylistically. So similar to a lot of Brazilians, the wrestling isn't the strong suit. He has an 18% takedown success rate, which, considering his ground game offensive threat and his work with Eric Albarracin, I thought it would be a bit better, but he seems to be a lot more comfortable at finding a submission when or if his opponent can get him to the ground. And I definitely say if, because being so short, he has the lower center of gravity, making it very difficult for his opposition to get underneath his hips, especially with the explosivity he has to sprawl back quickly, which he has shown great takedown defense in many high-level fights, like especially when he fought AJ McKee in their second fight. There was a lot of good moments of takedown defense in that one, but the takedown defense isn't impenetrable, and he does seem to have a harder time defending when he doesn't have the room to sprawl when he is up against the cage, which multiple fighters have managed to secure deep double legs against him. Now, as I touched on in the wrestling department, he tends to not mind actually being taken down if the opponent can even manage to take him down. And ultimately, that is thanks to BJJ being his true base. This guy is dangerous on the ground. He is a BJJ black belt and is extremely versatile when it comes to his offense. He can literally hunt a submission from anywhere, whether it be a choke-based submission or an upper limb-based submission, or even the versatility within his leg-based submissions as well. But what he does love most as his absolute bread and butter, which Dustin Poirier and the Gilly Goose Gang would be proud of, is his arm-in guillotines. Whether it's pulling guard or weaseling it in on the ground, they are airtight, and he has managed 5 of those guillotines, as well as 2 rear naked chokes, 2 heel hooks, an arm bar, and a Kimura in his career. And he is still very capable from his guard, even when he gets dropped, even when he's in recovery mode. That's just how comfortable this guy is on the ground. Now, as I previously stated, his record is 12-1 with submissions, and that was thanks to AJ McKee hitting his own guillotine after Pitbull got ran through on the feet with a head kick at range, which he just tucked into. It was time to absolute perfection, which dropped him, and then AJ McKee just submitted him all in less than 2 minutes. But aside from that hiccup, the guy is an absolute freak on the ground that everyone in the top 15 will need to look out for, especially with that submission base. So ultimately, it's safe to say we are getting a very entertaining, heavy-handed counter striker with a severe BJJ threat as an addition to the UFC roster that I am very keen to see. Now, we know he's going to be strong against shorter range strikers and those who cannot deal with him effectively on the feet, like your Bryce Mitchells and your Dan Igues to an extent more so. And he even has threats for stronger wrestlers like your Aljamain Sterlings and your Movsar Evloevs with that submission arsenal. But we also know that an identifiable weakness for him is facing dynamic, fast strikers at range, which Yair Rodriguez does fit that bill, which will make the fight at UFC 314 just that much more interesting from a stylistic perspective and a stylistic hurdle that he is going to have to face. And along with that, ultimately, looking at a macro perspective, looking at the longevity of him, that age is a troubling factor for him to make it all the way to the top and try and stay there. That I'm sure that is what he is hoping for, because he is 37 years old. He's coming in a bit later than he would want to at the peak competition that the UFC is right now. But regardless, he will definitely be a fun addition to the UFC. Now, I hope you enjoyed today's UFC Fighter Spotlight video, and if you want to see more MMA-based content, there's just a video here on the screen for you, and there will be a Patricio Pitbull versus the Featherweight Top 15 video coming very soon, so keep an eye out for that one, and please like, comment, subscribe. It goes a long way for the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.